Good evening, pilots, and welcome back to Flying with OverKill F-18C. Well, the day has finally come. We finally have the TGP ready to roll where it's worth it to go over it. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. So currently we have on stations 2 and 8 AGM-65Es, or the laser-guided Mavericks, and then on stations 3 and 7 we have our GBU-12s, the laser-guided bombs. So let's go ahead and get the Mavericks timing in while we're sitting here jabbering on. The other thing we need to do is get the FLIR ready. So we're going to come on down here and flip this FLIR switch to on, and that will get it warming up as well. You can see the FLIR button has now appeared on the AMPCD. Okay, so we can tap that FLIR button and we'll see it's not timed out yet. Okay, so while we are climbing out, let's go ahead and level out here. 18,000, 19,000 is more than sufficient for what we need today. So we'll go ahead and throw our autopilot on here. Now, while we're waiting for our TGP to warm up, let's go ahead and set the laser code for our Mavericks. For those of you who didn't see the Maverick tutorial, we're simply going to select the Maverick here. You can see that it's boxed. Hit UFC. Both weapons are selected by default. If you cycle it again, it will step through the stations and then turn off, but we want to change both of them. So we're going to go ahead and go code here, and we're going to use the default of 1688, which is what the TGP defaults to. So we've got our Mavericks ready to go, and now it's just a matter of waiting for our TGP to time in. We've got a couple miles here, and we're going to turn on to the target area. I'll go ahead and set that for 2. We'll travel another 10 seconds or so, and then we'll turn inbound and probably pause the camera. Let's go ahead and make our turn here for Waypoint 2. This is going to be our target area. So there we go, steering out. Oop, got a little far. That's alright. A little overturn there, but that's alright, no big deal. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and go into a active pause. Throw the aircraft into an altitude hold as well. And perfect, right on time, our TGP has now become available. First thing before we get into using the TGP, let's talk about controls we're going to need. So I'm just going to sort of work my way around my HOTAS here, so this is in no particular order, but these are things you're going to want. First thing you're going to want is your radar elevation controls mapped. The radar elevation controls will also allow you to zoom in and zoom out the TGP as long as it is selected as your sensor of interest. Which brings us to our next point. Your sensor control switches. You want to make sure all 5 of these are mapped. The depress switch I don't believe is used for the TGP, but they're good to have on. The rest of them we will absolutely use. As it depends what sensor your TGP is currently on, what DDI or AMPCD. Okay, then we're going to want your cage uncage button, and you're going to want your throttle target designator as well. If you do not have a TDC on your HOTAS, or a little mouse that you can move around, you're going to want to bind these controls somewhere that allows, this will enable you to move the TGP around. We can go into axis assign and come in here to throttle designator controller axis, and I leave them at default. They're pretty nice, but if you find that you need to either slow the TGP down or your TDC down or speed it up, you can adjust both the saturation here and this curve for sure. And I don't know why I said it like that. And that will increase or decrease the speed at which the TDC moves around. Okay, other controls, let's see here. Oh, no, we don't want to search, we just want all. You're going to want your undesignate button or your nose wheel steering button. Damn it, didn't mean to hit that. There you go. You're going to want your trigger mapped, obviously. Your weapons release button. And I think that about does it. Oh, yep. And we're going to want our raid field, or raid FLIR field of view button mapped to your HOTAS as well, as this will allow you to change the zoom level rapidly. And you guys will see what I'm talking about here once we get into it, but these are the controls you're going to want set, so make sure you guys have those at the ready, okay, if possible. Alright, so coming back into the cockpit, let's go ahead and come on down here. The first thing I'm going to do is hit sensor select aft, and when I do that, you can see this little diamond pop up with the dot in it, just like we saw in the Maverick tutorial, indicates that this screen, the A-18C, is our sensor of interest. Now you can have the FLIR on any of your screens. It's not bound to any particular one. There's actually pros and cons to each, so we'll talk about those in just a minute. So now that we've identified that, let's go ahead and just move on over to the left. This indicator here is telling you what the current offset from the nose of the aircraft, the TGP, is looking on your horizontal axis, so your longitudinal axis from left to right. So currently it's at 0, but if I move the TGP to the left, you can see now it's changing. And you also see this little indicator right here, this little diamond. Let me move in on that. Hopefully you guys can see that well. This also gives you a visual reference of where it is in relationship to the nose of the aircraft. And to bring it back, we just simply cage it again, okay, using our cage uncage button. Over here you have your field of view select button. In wide field of view you get the full picture. If we hit narrow, obviously that brings it into very tight view. Anything inside these 4 carets here are what you're going to see when you switch to narrow view. So this is a nice indicator if you need to put something in your narrow field of view but you want to make sure you can see it, just make sure it's inside these 4 carets here and you'll be just fine. Okay, you have your operation mode, which we'll go over when I switch over to another DDI, and I'll show you why in a minute. Then, as I said, using your radar elevation controls, or you can use the OSBs, you can zoom in and out, or you can use the HOTAS, as I'm doing now. Okay, which obviously is a much better way to go. In the caged position, this is the bore sight, or the, I should say, straight centered position for the TGP. It has a default of 5 degrees nose down. Okay, so this is going to be 5 degrees down from the nose of the aircraft, and it's important to remember that distinction. Okay, so it's not 5 degrees down from the velocity vector, but 5 degrees down from the nose of the plane. Okay, and then if I obviously pitch it down, you can see it's dropping, you know, and the zoom level will slow that pitch down, right? So we go back, and again, just cage it, just bring it back to center. The CCD down here, I hope you guys can see that well, basically indicates you're in TV mode, right? So no infrared. If we tap that button, however, now we get into the infrared modes, okay? And you can see that currently we're in white hot and black hot, okay? And we'll take a look at the differences of those once we get a target in front of us. Up here at the top of the white hot indicator, we have our current airspeed, and if you come back up to the HUD, you can see the same thing here. So it's repeating the HUD, and then your Mach of 0.75, Mach 0.75. Okay, so it gives you your Mach rating and your airspeed. This counter here, I have no idea what it does, so we're not going to worry about it. The laser search code, and we'll take a look at this here in a minute. This is if another either aircraft or something on the ground is emitting a laser and you want to use your TGP to find it. An example of this would be you got guys on the ground, they're being attacked by a tank, they report to you that they're painting a target, you know, using laser code 1688. Okay, we could set this in laser search mode, and before we do that, okay, and actually we'll hold off on that because we're going to see what that looks like, but basically we could press this laser search button as long as the aircraft's configured to do so, and the TGP will look around and find that laser code, and once it finds it, we'll be able to see the target that he's looking at, your guy on the ground. Over here we have our current aircraft altitude. We're at 18,990 feet. Again, we would see the same thing up on the HUD. You have a declutter button, which just pulls some of the indications away. I'm not quite sure what the purpose of that is. Our UFC button. Okay, now this, if we go up to, let's go ahead and unlock my camera. Because the laser target designator is not on, and we're not in master arm and not in air-to-ground mode, what we get here is LSTC, the laser search track code, what we were just talking about there. So if we wanted to change that to, let's say, you know, I think I actually have some lasers here. Let's take a look. We'll just set it up now. 1568. All right, so we would box that 1568, enter, come down here, and now the laser search code is set for 1568, and we're going to use that here in a minute so you guys will see what that's like. Now, if I want to be able to change the laser code that we are sending out from our TGP, we can go to air-to-ground mode, master arm, hit our UFC button again, and turn the laser on. That would probably help. Hit it when it does this. There it goes. And now we get laser target designator. Okay, so to fire our laser, you have to have this switch here forward. This is laser target designator ranger. Okay, so we need to have that. If we are searching for a laser code that somebody else is firing, we need to have this switch forward. Okay, laser search track. Okay, and we'll get into both of those here in just a minute. Okay, and so if we want to change our laser target designator code, which is listed right here, this is the code that we are going to shoot from our TGP. This is the code that somebody else is shooting and we are looking for. Okay, then you have here our velocity vector slave button. We'll go over that in a minute. The reticle button doesn't work, and then the trigger button. With the trigger boxed, when we pull the trigger, as long as the laser target designator switch is in the arm position, and you can see that here, laser arm. When we squeeze the trigger once, and it's not going to work right now, I'm not on anything, but when we squeeze the trigger, we will see this change to LTDR, and that means that the laser is currently firing. And you don't have to hold the trigger down, you just have to squeeze it once. It's like an on and off button. Okay. If we go to mark up here, what this will do is fire a laser, but it is a laser that a weapon cannot track. Where this would be handy is if you want to point out a target to another plane or someone on the ground again, and it's at night and they're using night vision goggles. When you fire that laser in the mark mode, you will actually be able to see the green beam coming down in your NVGs down to the ground area. That will tell you where your target is. Okay, so it's a pointer is all it is. Okay, so unmark that. We're not going to worry about mark today. Alright, so that is the gist of the TGP. Now let's get into tracking targets. So as far as tracking targets goes, there's three primary ways to track targets with the TGP. Two of them require you to have waypoints available. Okay, so we have a waypoint here. Waypoint 2 is our target area. What we're going to do is we're going to go to our SA page. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start pointing the TGP down. So you guys can see it's dropping. Let me zoom out a bit. I want it to drop as fast as it can here. And then now, if we look over here, it's finally gotten down far enough. This square box with a dot in it is a relationship of where the TGP is pointing. The 2 here is waypoint 2, the circle in it. Okay, waypoint 2. Okay, and so this square box is telling us where the TGP is pointing. Now this only works on the SA page. Don't mistake this page for the HSI. It's only the SA page. But if we keep coming down, okay, and now let's go back to our TGP because we're basically in the general vicinity. Let's go ahead and, oh no, black hot ain't gonna do it. Stay in white hot. There we go. There's a target right there. Alright, so here's what I was talking about with the zoom. So with this selected like this, if I hit my Raid FLIR field of view button, or the I key, okay, oh, my Maverick must be on. The Maverick will always take priority over your controls. So your Raid field of view button will affect the Maverick when the Maverick is boxed. So if we unbox the Maverick, and then come back down here and hit our Raid field of view button, now it will work. So if you ever find yourself where it's not working, you're hitting that I key, and you can't change the view, it's because your Maverick is active. Okay, the Maverick will take precedence over the TGP. Okay, so notice we can't see our target. But if I put it inside those 4 carats, and then hit it, there he is. Okay, so we would simply come over here like this, zoom in on the bastard using our radar elevation controls, and we're ready to roll. And if we were ready to right now, we would simply hit the trigger and we can fire the laser. So now you see the LTD/R, that means the laser is currently firing. My hand is not on the trigger anymore, and I'm going to squeeze it again, and now the laser is turned off. Okay, so let's go ahead and cage it back up again so we can see a different way of tracking a target. Okay, I hate that it's doing that, it's so bright. You know what, let's go into TV mode, that's why. That'd be a little bit better. It's because we're in a freaking cloud. Well, no, we'll just deal with it for now. Alright, so let's go back to our HSI and take a look at option number 2. So option number 2, our waypoint can be used to designate our target area. So what we can do is come down here and hit weapon designate, pressing that, and now you can see our TGPs down on the ground looking in the general vicinity of our waypoint. Okay, and we can move it around. It's going to be a little bit harder to find anyone like this because we are no longer in the FLIR mode. Okay, so this is where FLIR really comes in handy. So let's go back in here and see if we can't find anyone. So now we're just focused on the waypoint. So this is sort of the downside to it, is with the waypoint mode, Oh, there we go. There's one right there. It puts you just on where the waypoint coordinates are, not necessarily where a target is. Okay, so boom, there we go again. Alright, and then, you know, rinse and repeat. We can zoom in, target them, all that good stuff. Okay, now let me show you what I was talking about earlier with the operation mode, because we did talk about that. So if I hit my sensor select control in the direction of the sensor, so right now this is our sensor of interest, so I should be able to hit sensor control aft, and this operation mode should change from area track to point track, but for whatever reason on the AMPCD it doesn't work. So what we're going to do is move it up to the DDI. Okay, so we still have our target. Now what I'm going to do is hit sensor select right, because it's the right screen, and watch what the area track does. Boom. So now we're in point track. Okay, so, and where you would want to use that is point track is when you are tracking a high contrast object. So this is high contrast, okay? It doesn't blend in well with the background, so it's very high contrast. It's very easy to see. Okay, you would use area track when you have something that's sort of blending in, okay, where it's not very easily identifiable on the screen. Okay, so again, I have no idea why that is. It only seems to affect the AMPCD. I don't know if it's a bug or by design, but that is the way around it. If you're in that situation, you need to switch over to one of the DDIs. Okay, but we don't really need that for today, so let's go ahead and go back to FLIR, and that's the cool thing. So if you once you go to a DDI, you can set it to point track or the track that you want. You know, you can go back to your AMPCD and not have any issues there. All right, so let's bring that back up here. Okay, so finally, let's talk about the last way to do this. Okay, so the final way to do a track. Let's get it back into the wide field of view. Oh, it's because we still have the target designated. Let's undo that. There we go. My fault. So now we'll center it again. And let's go ahead and what we're going to do here. Now this got a little bit tricky because I can't exactly see it, so I'm going to unpause. Okay, let's see. Do I have labels disabled? Yeah, looks like I do. Okay, maybe not. There we go. So what it's doing now is what we're going to do is come down here and select this VVSL. Okay, so let me actually go into an active pause again. So we box that. Now what it's going to do is it's going to follow the velocity vector. Okay, so let's go ahead and unpause here. And let's see if we can't find a target. Try to put it right in there. Okay, and I can hit my target designate button. Okay, and that will box the target, and that more or less, let's go ahead and go back into an active pause so I don't slam into the ground. And we zoom out. There you go. There, and even after we've designated the target, by the way, so we've already created the diamond. Then remember, the diamond is our target point. We can turn our labels back off now. You can now see that you can get in the target again, rinse and repeat, boom, and we're back on the sky and ready to roll. Okay? Alright guys, so we've gone over the symbology of the TGP, how to turn it on, how to set it up, how to set your Mavericks and laser codes, and the laser codes for the TGP, whether it be the search mode or our designator code. We've taken a look at the 3 ways to track a target. So now I think what we're going to do is go ahead and call this one here, and we will do a part 2 where we actually go into employing the weapon and using the laser search modes. Alright guys, I'll see you in the next one.